work around organizing agile teams and trains. And I'm going to try and cover these topics. So I'll talk a little bit about why organizing around value is so important in SAFe. Then we'll review the work from the book Team Topologies by Matthew Skelton and Manuel Paez and how we can apply that to SAFe. And then we're going to spend a bit of time thinking about how we can scale some of those recommendations to help us think about how we organize our agile release trains. And then finally, I'll say a few things about how we might want to get started with these patterns before allowing some time for questions, of course. So it really all starts with organizing around value. And organizing around value is absolutely central to SAFe. When we speak to our customers, organizing around value is the #1 problem that they have when they come to implement SAFe. They tell us that it's difficult to think about a different way to organize. They don't always have the guidance they need to think about how they can change their existing organizational models to create one that is more focused around flow. So when we released the latest set of updates to SAFe in February this year, one of the big focus areas was providing more guidance. How do we organize around value to shorten the time to market and delight our customers? And one thing we know for sure is in our current organizations, when we come to think about how we create value in terms of the products and the services that we deliver, we have to manage and coordinate work across many different organizational silos. And you can see the example on the slide here. And in such a functional organization, we have developers working with developers, testers working with testers, architects and system engineers working together. And while there are benefits to organizing in that way, it doesn't mean that value flows very easily. It means that we have to have management helping us to coordinate and project manage the flow of value from one department to another. And this often means that progress is slow, there are handoffs, often there are delays in the system as well. So we find this a very time-consuming way to work. It makes cooperation very difficult. Often the separate departments become very focused on what it is they need to do. And of course, in SAFe, our solution to this is to organize our agile release trains, these groups of 50 to 125 people, around the flow of value, around our value streams. And in this way, each agile release train has all the people, all the functions it needs to successfully develop a solution or a set of solutions, which is either a product or a service or some kind of system that we're building for a customer. And of course, once we start to organize in this way, the agile release train can apply things like systems thinking. It can start creating a cross-functional organization where it can measure and improve the flow of value to decrease the time to market all the time and improve its processes. But one of the challenges that we've noticed is due to the fact that the majority of the people on the agile release train will be the agile teams. So maybe if the agile release train is 125 people, we may have between 10 and 12 agile teams on these agile release trains. And we know that the agile teams themselves desire to be cross-functional. They're typically 5 to 11 people. They have a product owner, they have a scrum master. But when we come to think about how we design our agile release trains, how we organize them around value, we also need to think very carefully how we design our teams. Because if we set our teams up in the wrong way, then all the benefits we're trying to get from creating cross-functional agile release trains are going to be lost. And this is what we started to recognize in the field as well. So if we don't organize the teams appropriately, then we lose all the benefits associated from forming our agile release trains. So some examples on this slide. If we form the teams poorly, we might find there are so many dependencies across the teams that it makes it very difficult for the agile release train to deliver the features. And you can see this illustrated on the program board on the right-hand side. The other challenge that the authors of the book Team Topologies talk about is cognitive load. And cognitive load can be thought about as the mental effort required to do the work that we task the teams with doing. And if we create the teams in a poor way and we don't design them efficiently, then we may overload them in terms of the types of work we're asking them to do, which may impact and stretch their cognitive load to breaking point. And if we put too much cognitive load on the teams, along with needing to create very complex ways and interactions between the teams, it'll also mean that things like quality suffer, things like predictability become much harder. It becomes much more difficult to be productive. And the real upshot of poor team design that we're seeing is that the people who work in these teams become very frustrated with these new lean and agile ways of working. So all of these observations really drove us to include more guidance in the framework around team design. Up until now, the guidance has been specifically around feature teams and component teams. And that was the only guidance that we provided. But we also saw that organizing by feature and component team also presents some challenges. How we define feature teams was often unclear. Often they couldn't deliver value end to end. And sometimes the reasons for creating component teams were very mixed. Sometimes it was because we wanted to optimize around specific expertise areas. Sometimes it was because we wanted to build reusable services. But often it meant that we had too many component teams and it became harder and harder to deliver value to our customers. So last year, we were very lucky. A seminal book, Team Topologies by Matthew Skelton and Manuel Piez, really advanced the thinking around team design. And I'm sure many of you have read this book. And specifically, the authors of this book provide insights on how we can organize our development effort around 4 fundamental topologies or patterns. And you can see them on the slide here. So we have the stream-aligned topology. Organized around the flow of work, they can deliver value to the customer without needing much support from the other teams. We have the complicated subsystem team, which recognizes that some subsystems require deep expertise. And we'll look at some of those in a minute. We recognize the platform team, who are going to build reusable services and platforms that other teams can then make use of. And we also recognize the enabling team, which is a team that will help other teams develop specific capabilities or adopt new technologies. And the really nice thing about this book and these topologies is that they are meant to be exhaustive. So the authors in their research suggest that these are the only 4 topologies we need to model the agile teams or the teams of any kind that we're forming. The other nice thing about the team types that you can see on the slide here is they map to specific responsibilities and behaviors that can help us think about how these teams need to operate and work together. And what we've done is take these team topologies and integrate them within SAFe. And on each slide here, I have the responsibilities and behaviors we need these teams to apply as they work within a SAFe environment. And I'm just going to go through them briefly. So when we think about the stream-aligned team, it's critical that they know their customer. This team is going to build and maintain a relationship with their customer to gain a deep understanding of the market segment that they're serving. The work they're going to do is to deliver a steady flow of features. Features, of course, describe a particular customer need and the associated benefits, and that'll be the majority of the work they do. They're going to apply design thinking techniques to explore the problem space, understand the solutions they need to build to delight their customers, and they're going to be continuously improving their practices. So making sure they're reserving time always to invest in the processes and tools they need to improve the way they work. And of course, built-in quality. They take direct responsibility for the quality of the work they do, but they will need to collaborate from time to time with other teams. They'll identify those collaborations. And of course, they'll have to collaborate with the complicated subsystem teams and the platform teams as well. And they need to be responsive. They need to identify requests from customers, new features, incidents, improvements in existing solutions. And they also take responsibility for supporting the solutions they've built after they've released them. So the stream-aligned teams follow very much a they build it, they run it mentality. Now within SAFe, the solutions we're building are very large sometimes. So it's very rare that we can have a single stream-aligned team to build an entire solution. So more commonly what we're seeing is to decompose these stream-aligned teams along a portion of the work. And some examples on this slide, it could be by a particular customer or market segment. Or maybe there's a set of features that one particular team delivers. Or maybe it's some specific steps in the customer journey. But whatever it is, the real benefit of organizing the teams in this way is that it generates real customer centricity. So each team has a direct relationship with the customers they serve. And one of the determining factors of whether the stream-aligned team has the authority and responsibility to deliver the value is whether it can do that independent of other teams. And that's really what we desire here. Now, why it's a reasonable ambition to hope that all of our teams are stream-aligned, it's unlikely that will always be the case, as hard as we try. So sometimes there are always parts of the system that require such deep knowledge and deep skills that it would overload the cognitive load of those stream-aligned teams to ask them to pick it up. And in those circumstances, we create complicated subsystem teams. And these are teams who are specifically responsible for areas of the solution where it requires deep, deep expertise. And of course, here they have responsibility to build and maintain and support these complicated subsystems, but also the team members themselves have the responsibility to maintain their level of expertise to make sure they can continue to support these systems into the future. They're going to collaborate with the stream-aligned teams who will be relying upon them to build and maintain these systems, and they need to plan their work effectively with the work of the stream-aligned teams in mind. And then, of course, they need to think about how they define, develop, and document interfaces to these complicated subsystems. And again, they're going to take the responsibility for building in quality to ensure the technical and architectural integrity of these important subsystems at all times. The important thing here, though, is that we're not aligning complicated subsystem teams to just system components. Any system or solution can be defined in terms of its components. What we're saying here is these are specifically the parts of the system that require deep, deep expertise only, where it would be unreasonable to ask the stream-aligned teams to work on them. So things like highly specialized components, or safety critical systems, or perhaps systems which require deep expertise around business rules and algorithms, or maybe it's part of a cyber physical system, for example. And then much like the complicated subsystem teams, the platform teams are really crucial to enabling the stream-aligned teams to deliver value quickly and reduce their cognitive load. And the definition of this team is fairly simple. They're building reusable platforms and services. You can see some examples on the right-hand side here, so that many, many stream-aligned teams can benefit and make use of these platforms and services. So of course, as a team, they need to collaborate with the stream-aligned teams. They need to build the platform incrementally based on the needs of those teams. And they need to focus really heavily on usability. Are the platforms that we're building usable for the teams who need to consume them? In other words, those stream-aligned teams are their customers. And then, of course, they need to commit to the upkeep of those platforms. They need to put SLA definitions in place. They need to maintain and support them as they go. The really important thing here is that the platform teams need to be building these platforms as thin as possible, practicing what it is that they preach, so that the platforms themselves build on top of other platforms, and we generate and create an architecture that is going to serve us well in the future. And then finally, the enabling teams. And this is a really critical pattern that we've seen work very effectively. So we know that as we develop our solutions, the tools and techniques that we use to do it are always changing and advancing. So technology is always offering us new tools and techniques that we can use to apply to our work. And although this brings real benefits to the organizations, it also represents real challenges in terms of how do we skill up the teams and create the expertise they need to develop these new capabilities. And this is where the enabling team comes in. This team has the primary responsibility of helping the other teams gain new expertise, develop new capabilities, and adopt new tools and techniques. So this team is going to be all about innovation. They're going to be promoting best practice across the organizations. They're going to be collaborating proactively with the other teams, helping them understand the new ways of working and support them in adopting new technologies. They're going to keep the business up to date on the emergence of new tools and techniques. And they're also going to live and breathe a continuous learning culture. These enabling teams are always looking for ways and examples to improve the ways that we're working. And a good example of an enabling team in SAFe is the system team, a specialized team helping the art develop and understand how to adopt and get the best out of CI/CD tools, DevOps tools, testing and environmental tools. And there's some other good examples on the slide here. We've seen enabling teams built around DevOps practices, enabling teams focused around testing practices, software engineering practices as well. Now, one thing we know as we start to think about the different team types is that in SAFe, these teams all operate as part of an Agile release train. So one of the things that we're encouraging people to do when they design their arts and the teams that compose them is to think about how they might visualize the interactions between the teams. So you can see on the slide here that we're using these different icons to represent the different team types. And this can be very useful when you come to think about modeling the different options you have available to visualize the likely interactions between the teams through their positioning relative to one another. And then, of course, you can start to add to them the name of the teams to represent the teams in your organization. And what we found is that by visualizing it in this manner, really helps us to trade off competing designs against each other and think about which team designs will be most conducive to improving flow. So in this example, we have one platform team supporting 3 stream-aligned teams. There's one complicated subsystem team that is supporting 2 stream-aligned teams. And we have a single enabling team that is currently working with 2 stream-aligned teams to help them adopt and develop new capabilities and technologies. Now, of course, when you look at the Team Topologies book, the authors of that book were primarily focused on how do we apply topologies to individual teams. But within SAFe, of course, we have many enterprises building very, very large systems. And so we've extended that guidance and supporting our enterprises in applying it to developing large solutions. So as you know, in many situations, we have very, very large value streams building very, very large solutions. Often there's hundreds, potentially thousands of developers working together to develop these large systems. And again, we need to think about what are the patterns we can use to apply to our Agile release trains to decompose them in such a way that the individual arts are focused on products as much as possible, they can deliver value as easily as possible, and they're as independent as possible from the other Agile release trains within the large solutions. So here we've already started seeing enterprises applying the topologies to Agile release trains. Now, one exception that we haven't seen yet is the enabling topology. So although it's very common to see 1 or 2 enabling teams working together to enable the organization in a particular area, we haven't seen, or we don't necessarily see the need to create a whole enabling art. It may emerge in the future, but to date, we haven't seen that pattern. So again, just like previously, we're seeing enterprises create stream-aligned arts. This is our desired state. It's where we can create a whole art that has all the necessary personnel, skills, the authority they need to deliver value, whether it's an entire product or a portion of that product. And the same options that we looked at earlier for breaking down our solutions apply well to stream-aligned arts as well. But the other thing we're also seeing is that for our customers who are building very large systems, complicated subsystem arts are also very common as well. And again, this is to really reduce the cognitive load on the stream-aligned arts. So for example, we're seeing organizations in the automotive space creating complicated subsystem arts around things like a guidance system for an autonomous vehicle, a system that is too complex to require the stream-aligned arts to work on it. And again, just like it's common for solution trains to have complicated subsystem arts, we're also seeing the use of platform arts extensively as well. So creating systems and platforms that other arts can build on top of. Again, thinking about an autonomous vehicle, something like a communication system that's managing the transfer of data between various subsystems would likely be represented as a platform art with clearly defined and documented interfaces between that and the arts that are consuming it. Now, the other pattern that we've started to see as well, specifically around the platform art, is that many organizations are creating platform arts to provide services that support other development value streams outside of that particular platform art. So what I mean by that is there are other development value streams that are not building the same solution, but which can consume the same services. So for example, you can see an example on the slide here. Here we have 3 streamlined arts in a financial organization. One is building a set of mortgages solutions. One is building a set of personal loan solutions. One is building a set of car loan solutions. And within the same portfolio, we have a dedicated core banking platform art, building the services that the other arts rely upon because of the benefits of the reuse, the overlaps in the technology needed, and the specialism required to provide those services. And we're seeing this pattern again and again in organizations who are thinking about how to be more effective in their art design. Now, one thing I really wanted to emphasize very clearly, and I want to use the same examples to do this, is how we apply the topologies at different levels. And this is an important consideration. So we have an Agile release train here, the one that is focused on the mortgage solutions. It is a streamlined art. It can deliver end-to-end value to the customer. But the team structure within that art doesn't have to follow exactly the topology of the art itself. So for example, if you look at the team structure here, you can see we have 3 teams on the left organized by customer groups: first-time buyers, remortgaging customers, and existing customers. That is one type of the streamlined team topology. But we also have 2 teams in the middle. Again, they're streamlined, but these ones are organized around the steps of the customer journey. So one team that is dedicated to supporting the online channel, and one that is dedicated to supporting the physical channel. And then finally, we have 2 more streamlined teams, one that is organized around compliance and regulation, and one that is organized around product innovation. So when we come to apply the topology patterns, even within the streamlined topology, we can think about the different ways of aligning them to make sure we're maximizing the benefits for the organization. And then importantly, even though this is a streamlined art, within it, it contains a single complicated subsystem team. Because there is a subsystem on this release train that is so complex, it requires deep actuarial knowledge. It's the loan origination system. And making changes to that system requires deep expertise that takes many, many years to gain. Things like changing the rates of the products that we're going to offer. It would overload the other teams and impact flow if we require them to work on that. And then just one more example, working in the other direction. So here we have a core banking platform art. We saw that previously. But even though it's a platform art, the teams on that art are a mix of streamlined in this case and an enabling team. So we have 4 streamlined teams who can deliver the value they need based on the mission and the solution that that Agile release train is delivering, the platform in other words. And these streamlined teams are organized around specific parts of the customer journey. So one streamlined team can modify and update the platform related to anything to do with new accounts. One can work on closing accounts. One can work on the services around processing payments. In fact, we have 2 teams on that because there's so much work to do there. But they're still streamlined teams because they have the authority and the ability to do everything they need based on the work that the platform art is delivering. And in this particular situation, we've got an enabling team embedded in this art focused on automated testing. This platform art is building on top of a mainframe system, so they've got a specialized enabling team that has deep, deep knowledge around automated testing in a mainframe environment. And this enabling team will likely stay with them for 1 or 2 PIs to really help them gain the deep knowledge they need before moving off to another art to help them with their testing needs as well. And it's really this pattern of enabling these teams to support the other teams that is a great way to improve skills and help to improve the flow of value to our customers. So we're seeing real benefits from these topologies. Many of our customers were using these before we put them into the framework. And the behaviors and the responsibilities and some of the patterns really take us beyond the simple feature and component guidance that we had before. But I did want to share just a few things in conclusion about where you might think about getting started in terms of your first steps. And I think one thing that all of the organizations that are challenged with this problem need to be aware of is the impact of team organization on our system design. And I think everyone on this call today is familiar with Conway's law. It recognizes that the systems we design will often copy the ways that we're organized. So if we organize around components, then we'll often build a system that is designed around components. And if we reverse this, one of the ways that we can avoid this unintentional design is to apply the inverse Conway maneuver. And in this situation, what we're trying to do is create a desired system design, which we can then replicate in our organizational structure. So when we come to think about our streamlined teams, our complicated subsystem teams, our platform teams, we need to also think in connection to that, what is the desired architecture that we want to move towards, both to enable those teams, but also so that if we organize those teams around that desired architecture, over time we'll be forced to also adapt our architecture to meet our organizational design. So we can't separate these two concerns from one another. Now, the other thing that we've also been seeing is that the migration from a component-based structure to the team topologies is also taking some time. And the recommendation here is to spend some time thinking about what is our ideal team design state. And then once we have a good understanding of that, think about some of the skills that we need to develop to help us achieve that. And once we have a good understanding of the skills we need, rather than changing overnight, we might decide that we want to do this as a migration. So change a couple of teams at a time, use things like pair programming, pairing people who have the knowledge and those who don't, creating enabling teams to help the streamlined teams gain the knowledge, and over time start to build up the skills we need so that we can eventually move to a better, more streamlined structure. One of the things we can also think about doing is rotating some of the team members between different teams to help transfer some of this knowledge and skills as well. And then just as a final slide, I wanted to mention that we also recognize that reaching this desired end state is not an easy thing to achieve. In fact, creating a high-performing Agile team itself takes time, and it's a process that the team need to give real thought to how they do it. And one artifact that you can access from the SAFe community platform is the new SAFe Team Formation Toolkit. And alongside providing some exercise to help think about team design and some guidance about how to implement the team topologies, it also provides an opportunity for the Agile team as they form together to think about how they want to work together. What are the things that they want to define as success measures? Who are the other teams that they need to interact with? What are some of the skills that they want to develop? And what are some of the key dependencies that they'll have? And how do they want to work as a unit together? So please feel free to grab this. There's some useful exercises there to help think about how to help your Agile teams reach levels of high performance. And with that, I hope it was useful to hear some of the updates that we put into the framework. The topologies are there to create a set of foundational patterns that really help you with thinking through the design of your teams. They don't provide all the answers immediately, but hopefully they provide some tools to take away that you can apply when thinking about the different ways to organize. The guidance itself is in the framework in various different articles. You'll see it in the courses as well. There's also an advanced topic article. The link was in the slide previously, and I'll share it in a minute, where you can see all the team topologies work in a single place. And that's a nice place to go and reference to get the entire picture. So with that, Rosalind, I'll pass it back to you and see if there's any questions that have come in.
Thank you, Andrew. I don't see any questions for now yet. Probably people just trying to get back to ability to speak and to write. And we hope the questions will appear soon. Anyway, let's talk with each other while we're waiting. Uh, can you explain the motivation for integrating this book to the Scaled Agile framework? Because Manuel Pies and Matthew Skelton are not safe fellows, as I see.
Yeah, so, we haven't had very good guidance around organizing our teams, or we haven't had deep guidance. So we've talked about feature teams and component teams, but as I mentioned, we've seen that the component team organization pattern often gets misused because people think that every time they have a component, they need to create a component team. And what we were seeing was that organizations were putting a lot of effort into designing their agile release trains, but often the benefit was really being lost because the teams on those trains could not deliver end-to-end value. And the book Team Topologies had a very big impact. It's been used by many of our customers. It's based on real practical application. And I think the real important additions are recognizing the platform team. That was not something we recognized before. The enabling team, we all see the benefit of that. And really emphasizing that a complicated subsystem team is not the same as a component team. We only use a complicated subsystem team where we have the need for deep, deep expertise. So I think in short, it filled a gap that we had in the framework, but it also helped to stop people going down these anti-patterns. Because one of the nice things you'll see about the book is it includes clear responsibilities for each team type that provides you better guidance for when to apply each team type. And that's an important thing as well.
Thank you. Oh, I see the first question from Sergei Rogachev. Maybe you know each other. He's asking, Andy, what is the main difference between complicated subsystem teams and platform teams?
Yeah, this is a great question, and this is a long discussion we've had. And I think in some circumstances, Sergey, you may not see some differences. So in some systems, there may be a complicated subsystem that is being provided through an interface that makes it look very much like a platform. I think the big difference, though, is a complicated subsystem is defined by the fact it is a subsystem. The platforms are defined very specifically to be a thin layer of services that are offered to other teams. So we design the platforms intentionally. The subsystems may just exist because they are complicated subsystems. The other thing about the platform teams, I think, that is slightly different as well, is they often have customers wider across the organization than the complicated subsystem teams. So often we're seeing the complicated subsystem teams are working on behalf of a very smaller number of stream-aligned teams, whereas the platform teams are servicing sometimes entire other value streams. But I think the big difference was the first point I made, is that we're designing these platforms to be thin. Over time, some complicated subsystems could become platforms, of course, but they often start as bigger things that are more intangible. But they are very closely related. I would say that as well.
Thank you. I know that Sergei Rogachev had insight about these two types of teams. And of course, we tell about this on our trainings. I don't see any... Sergei Rogachev still asking through the chat. Is it true knowledge domain of platform teams is the same as the stream-aligned teams, which is their customers, and domain of subsystem teams is the system?
So one thing I would say is both the platform teams and the complicated subsystem teams have the same goal. And the goal is to reduce the cognitive load on the stream-aligned teams. That is important. The big difference, though, I think, and in terms of their customers, yes, most of the time their customers will be stream-aligned teams, but the platform teams may also have as customers other complicated subsystem teams, of course. because we might be extracting platforms and thin layers outside of those complicated subsystems. But I think the real big difference, again, is the fact that designing the platforms is an intentional decision. We're going to create some platforms to abstract away some of the complexity of our systems. The complicated subsystems probably exist today as very complex components. And over time, we might try and turn those complicated subsystems into platforms to make them thinner and more easily to maintain as well. But that's my experience from the field. Sergey, you may be seeing different things as well, for example.
Okay, it more and more looks like a dialogue of two of us, or two of you. And of course, Sergey Rogachev took an example from his pocket and says platform teams have to provide consulting, streamlined teams. The idea is guys from platform teams is evangelists inside the corporation, inside the enterprise, who are caring about clearness and self services in streamlined teams to allow those guys to build things with themselves in platform. But while guys from platform teams looking for integrity, clearness, and keep the platform in the order, and teach other guys to merge some changes in the platform, but keep it in the careful way.
This is a great point, and I agree 100%. You know, the customers of the platform teams are the streamlined teams in most cases, and usability of the services and platforms they produce is paramount. So not only do they need to be well documented, self-service as much as possible, but the platform teams, of course, need to make sure that they're getting feedback from the streamlined teams in how those things are being used and adopted as well. Don't forget the platform teams are also looking for opportunities to abstract out other functionality into thin platforms if it would benefit and reduce the cognitive load on the streamlined teams as well. So the platform teams are very aware also of where they can help those teams by taking that action.
Yeah, the question about the cognitive load is quite actual. Even in our clients who has only 30 or 50 people in development, they already face this problem. Okay. Oh, Andrei Akinin, his idea with enable team like specs and development. Okay, thanks for your statement. I don't see this question here. Andy, maybe you know some challenges that you have seen with organizations who are applying team topologies as part of their safe implementations, since you are safe provider.
Yeah.
Probably you know this knowledge base already, cases, challenges, and so on.
Well, I think there's a couple of challenges. So, you know, one of the challenges we've seen, and Sergey, his questions have kind of highlighted this. This is not just a relabeling of component and feature teams. So a streamlined team is not just a different name for a feature team. A complicated subsystem is not just a different name for a component team. There is real difference here in how we define these teams, their responsibilities, and how they interact with the other teams. So I think one of the challenges is that people are not recognizing that difference, and they are seeing them as more similar to what we had in the past, and creating, for example, Rosalind, too many complicated subsystem teams, where actually we need to challenge ourselves to create more streamlined teams. The other challenge we see is that when you create a streamlined team, you need to specifically define its domain. A streamlined team is not just a collection of people who can work on anything. A streamlined team has a specific area of responsibility, whether it's a part of the solution, part of the customer journey, a set of features. And if we don't define that, then the teams don't have the ability to gain the expertise and the customer relationship that makes it so important to become a successful streamlined team. So it's very important also to define what is the scope of the streamlined teams, coming back to the cognitive load thing as well. Because the customer relationship piece is critical to them being successful in creating streamlined teams.
Thank you. Yeah, by the way, Andrei and Nikin, congratulations, since you are SPC now. Andrew, we have a fresh SPC here.
Perfect.
Plus one,
Congratulations. Yeah. Congratulations, Andre.
And no questions anymore. Okay, let's final question from me, I think. Is it final point of these receipts and guidance in organizing teams and arts, or you planning to some further development of this guidance about team topologies and evolution of some approaches for organizing around value?
Yeah, so a couple of important things. It's a great question. So a couple of important things. Well, number one, of course, we're always getting feedback from our customers and our partners, and we'll continue to adapt and update the guidance. Now, one article that we are working on is all about applying the topologies. So, Rosalind, we have an article now about what the topologies are and defining them, but we want another article providing some patterns of application. And I gave you some examples that'll find its way into the framework. But as people who have read the book know, there's another part to it, another two parts actually. There's a whole part around the architecture, what the authors call fracture planes. How do we break down our monolithic systems in a way that enables good team design? So that's going to be something that we also look at and integrate into the framework. The third part of the book is around interactions between the teams. So the authors define interaction patterns between the team types. Now, we already define interactions in SAFe. We have events, but there may be some work there also that is beneficial. But I think the big next thing, Rosalind, is going to be the piece around the architecture. So how do we balance addressing the architecture constraints alongside what we want to do with the team design? Because you can't do one without the other, to be honest.
Thank you. Keep watching on it. But keep the pace suitable to make us able to accreditate and keep us up to date for the training, because now it's 5.0.1. We're trying to keep it up to date.
Yeah, for sure.
I see no questions anymore, guys. Maybe you are shy to write. Maybe you can say something. Anybody in Russian or in English? Actually, I don't know how we can merge it, but write in chat if you want to ask something in Russian, and we will find a way to.
And Rosalind, I don't mind if for the last 10 minutes, if people have questions about SAFe more generally or things that we're doing, you can ask me anything if you want, even not on this topic. I don't mind.
Not only about teams and arts and teams topologies, anything about SAFe and even Agile, I think. Wow, PI objective is OKR. When? So, in which version? We see it's in strategic themes, and when PI objectives will be OKR finally? Okay,
so okay, these are the tough questions now. So in all seriousness, so I did a talk a few weeks ago with Atlassian around OKRs. Excuse me. And we know in SAFe that we only have OKRs at the moment in one place. We have OKRs in defining our strategic themes. But we also know that OKRs is a big body of knowledge. It's being adopted widely, helps bring real clarity, connecting strategy and execution. So in that talk, Sergey, and I can probably find you the recording, I did create a demonstration of how iteration goals connect to PI objectives, connect to strategic themes, and talked a little bit about how the OKR language can help us to structure our PI objectives in a much better way. In terms of officially extending the guidance, there's nothing yet, but it is something we're thinking about all the time. It's a question that comes up often for sure. Yeah.
So keep watching and stay tuned.
There's two videos. There's one video on the community platform where Drew and Jennifer talk about using the OKR format to write PI objectives. And there's the video I did recently when I talk a little bit about it as well. I don't think if you get asked the question in class and people see benefits in writing their objectives in that way, there's nothing negative about that, I don't think.
That's why we do this in exact that way for 2 years already.
Great.
But if you will include it in the framework, it will be easier for us. Just say, hey guys, it's written here. Stop doing wrong things. Just use OKR. Mark Richards, yes, told us 2 years ago. Yeah, and he is a safe fellow. It's announced in 5.2. It's a rumor or not?
That's so funny. So when Mark promised me never to release any secrets, now I know. But in all seriousness, so you mentioned it before, Rosalind, we have a balance to play here, right? There are new bodies of knowledge that people like you are adopting, but there's also a pace of change that is appropriate for customers and people doing safe. So the balance we have to find is how can we integrate new ideas and bodies of knowledge, but also not go too fast. Now we can integrate things without doing a new version of SAFe. When we did the team topologies originally, we released it as an advanced topic article. And it was like that for 6 months before the new version. The same with participatory budgeting. So I think more likely what you might see is some of these new themes emerging as advanced topics perhaps, but there's no commitment at the moment to OKRs in a 5.2, or there's no commitment to a date for anything like that. So
okay, yeah. We will keep our course then.
Keep tapping Mark up for more secrets. And
probably it's Australian snakes and spiders, and you can't confide on the men who live in such a dangerous environment. But anyway, if you will visit Enterprise Agile Russia conference in person, probably you also will be not able to keep some secrets, since we are very warm hosts for our speakers.
And actually, you know what? It's not keeping secrets is not the aim either, because actually what we want to do is we want to hear the things you're hearing. So, I know you and I keep in touch, but also anyone else on this call, as you start to hear things about what customers are doing and how we can improve the framework, it's great for us, because that's where we get our feedback from, right? No, I like the challenge. It's good.
Yeah, it's our typical manner. Sorry if you didn't know that. It's a Russian style of conduct trainings. Sorry for that. Thank you very much, Andrew. You came to us and you're such a easy guy in speech. Such high person in our Enterprise Agile Russia meetup. Thank you very much. I hope you will give us links you wanted to share.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll send you my slides. Of course, you have the recording, but I'll send the slides and a few other links. I'll do it tonight, and you have everything, and please share it with everyone.
Yeah, we can bind it in one big letter and send it to everyone who shared email with us in this Zoom chat. Right here, right now, just today, just for you. 1st April is not so funny a day when we're talking about serious things with serious guys in our serious environment. Thank you very much once again. I hope you will visit us soon. And hope we also see you on another conference, Enterprise Agile Russia, in November.
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you for inviting me, and nice to meet everyone. And please stay in touch and enjoy the rest of the event.